Hey Mike, you got a book that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I just read this book recently. It's called The Man Monkey by Nick Redfern. It's in search of the British Bigfoot. Now, that would seem like a major endeavor to be able to go to Great Britain, to England, and find a Bigfoot there. So I had this book for a while. It took me a while to actually get down to reading it, and when I started reading the book, I noticed that there was a lot of similarities here to things I had read years and years ago. And of course, some of these same sources are in his bibliography, and that's why some of the stuff is popping up. But what it did was it made me think about the fact how I can come up with something new, that like this brand new book, and this was just published recently. Let's see what the date is. Yeah, 2007. So it's a brand new book, but a lot of the stuff that's in it is years and years old. And this man is a fairly young man, has been involved in this kind of research only for a few years now. He's relatively new to the subject matter. And so I started realizing that as people research these topics like Bigfoot, other enigmas like this, other mysteries that maintain over time, that the same work kind of gets redone in a cyclical pattern. Some of the same stuff gets brought up again and gone over. And what's particularly interesting is the fact that a lot of the people who are new to the search, in so many ways are so ignorant of all the stuff that was done by their predecessors. And part of that problem is because of the way things used to be. When somebody had a Bigfoot event, in order for other people to hear about it, that would have to make it into some kind of a news article. It would have to be in a newspaper someplace. That would be the most likely place you'd hear about it. Or secondhand, just from word of mouth, of course. Maybe occasionally you'd hear somebody on the radio bring this up and talk about it on a radio broadcast of some sort. But we didn't have the internet back then, so this stuff wasn't immediately accessible, and people couldn't do crash courses in these kinds of subjects. They had to actually get down. They had to go to the library. They had to read these books, one after another, and it just took time to get all the information together in one place. And so, consequently, there's a lot of stuff in here that I remembered having read, and I decided that I would point some of these things out. Now, first of all, I want to state, and I may have said this before, but and if I reiterate, I apologize, but I think it's important for the point I'm trying to make here, is that my research here has indicated over the last 6 years, since I've been doing full-time research, that the Bigfoot thing breaks down into three basic types of Bigfoot. There's a legendary Bigfoot. That's the one that's caused by misidentifications, by us wanting to be at one with our bush soul, and all these typical answers you get to why people see Bigfoot when it doesn't exist. The legendary Bigfoot. Then there is a second type of Bigfoot. I would call it the paranormal Bigfoot. Now, there's people right now who are cringing who heard me say the word paranormal, because it causes them great discomfort when it's mentioned with Bigfoot. But get over it, folks. The fact is that if you go into a library, or if you go into a bookstore and you look on the shelves, if you go to Science and Nature, you're not going to find the Bigfoot books there. You're going to find them in the area where they have the occult and the paranormal and this sort of thing, because the average public looks at it as being all under the same rubric. So anyway, some people do claim that they have Bigfoot events that involve what appear to be UFOs in some way or another, either closely associated with the Bigfoot. He's carrying a glowing orb. His footprints are glowing. He's got a blue belt on that's glowing fluorescently. This kind of thing. A UFO lands in the woods. Next thing you know, some Bigfoot are showing up. There are these stories. So there's definitely a paranormal Bigfoot, whether you want to admit it or not. There are at least anecdotes of this. And then there's the third kind, which is the flesh and blood Bigfoot. Now that's the one that the Bigfoot enthusiasts are trying to prove and to document, and that's the one that the scientific establishment is the least likely to accept as being real. The established scientists will agree there's a paranormal one. Of course, they don't believe in it. They'll agree that there's a legendary one. That's the one they latch onto. That's the one they use as the excuse for the sightings. So they all agree on that. So the third one is the flesh and blood one, and that's the one we're all trying to analyze, we in the Bigfoot research community. But it's a mistake to throw all of the others out. And so in that vein, I want to bring up a couple of books. This one is one that was published years ago, and what it does is it talks about the fact that there are certain kinds of cryptids, or alien animals as they refer to them here, that seem to show up over and over and over again. Now, interestingly enough, this book comes out of Great Britain, the same place as this newer book that I was talking about. And so it's a major source for the stories in this book. But it has the same kind of things in common. There are certain figures that seem to appear over and over among these anomalous reports of anomalous cryptids. And that are something that flies, something that looks like a black dog, a giant cat of some sort that's out of place or is a color that it shouldn't be. These things all with glowing red eyes, and of course big hairy men, hairy bipeds. So the theme of these kinds of cryptids showing up in out-of-the-way places and places where they shouldn't be is recurrent. And it shows up in a number of books. Another book is this one, Mysterious America by Loren Coleman. Now Loren Coleman these days sticks pretty much exclusively to cryptozoology because he wants to be identified as a cryptozoologist and not someone that's into, you know, the crazy paranormal stuff. But nonetheless, he used to write about crazy paranormal stuff too, and so he knows that there's an overlap of these sorts of incidents. Another example of that fact is the book that he did along with Jerome Clark many years ago called Creatures of the Goblin World, where they also discuss, as you can see, UFOs and Bigfoot in association with each other, and other kinds of creatures like giant birds and big cats and dogs with glowing red eyes. A more recent book that delves into this is by a man named Peter Guttia, who I think his work has been largely overlooked by modern researchers because of the fact that he does indeed go into the realm of the paranormal Bigfoot, and that's his strength. And I would recommend this, which is a newer book for people who want to see what evidence he came up with during the time he was doing the research, because this book has all the files of all the stories that he personally collected. So it's an interesting array of books that if you were to just sit down and read these right here, it would bring you up to date on the paranormal Bigfoot. There are also some books by people who claim to be contactees, people who have spoken with Bigfoot or have spoken with Bigfoot and beings from outer space or UFO entities. These people exist in the Bigfoot community as well, and so you need to at least be aware that these stories are out there, and that's the reason why the public at large has a tendency to put this all under the rubric of paranormal and tends to laugh it off. But be aware, it's there, and you need to catch up on that if you haven't looked into any of that.